Before the gun went, it was humid and warm, and this breeze, in effect, a third problem for the athletes to deal with, to cope with. Well, Kaitani, tucked right behind her husband. He's the ideal pacemaker, isn't he? Because he's a huge lad, is Charles Coach. He's about 6'1" in the blue vest there, sheltering behind her if there is much wind about, affecting her just here, and dragging her well clear of the rest of the women's field. 9 kilometers for Kaitani there. Well, she went through 8K in 24:48, and I can tell you that world record pace at 8 kilometers would have been 25:58. So Kaitani is absolutely flying on world record schedule through this first half of the race. Quite a contrast, really, with the way things are unfolding in this men's competition. I wonder when one of these athletes will lose patience and start accelerating. Now that's interesting. It looks to me like they have just upped their tempo. The leading men there go through 10 kilometers and it's not quick enough. 28:45 at 10 kilometers. They really should have been on about 28 minutes. And I think that's why, as they saw the 10-kilometer marker and realized from the clock on the lead vehicle in front of them that they weren't going quickly enough. That's why they accelerated there. Well, here's Kaitani approaching 10 kilometers. 31 minutes on the clock. Now she's on schedule for 67 minutes. She should go through in 31:50. And her world record, 30:21 was her time at 10 kilometers. And she's actually going quicker than that today, can you believe? Timbre there, just handing the world record holder a drink. That will be thrown aside, I'm sure. That's a very common sight in major races. Athletes are sharing drinks amongst themselves, certainly in the first half. I think the gloves come off in the second half when they actually become a little bit more competitive and don't want to do each other any favours. But Kaitani there has a lovely relaxed style, very quick cadence too. She doesn't have a particularly long stride, but the turnover rate of her legs is quite remarkable. Well, here's that chasing trio, 54, 56, 57. That's Faisa Tadesse of Ethiopia. She's a 68-minute runner, is Tadesse, 54. 56 in the red there, Georgina Rono, and 57, Gladys Chirono, runners for the Armed Forces team back in Kenya. Many of these Kenyan athletes do run for government agencies that in fact make them full-time athletes. And 53, that's Hilde Kibet from the Netherlands, second in the Rotterdam Marathon last year in 2:24. She has enormous strength, building up for an April marathon again this year. And most of these athletes, of course, including these men, are world-class marathon runners, building up for a spring marathon to try and earn Olympic selection. And they're in the middle of a very, very heavy training period. And some of them may be running on tired legs, and others might have eased off for this and be fresh. And that's why you get this variation in performance. If they've eased off and they really have targeted this race today, then they might have a great day at the races. If they're tired and really haven't freshened up, then it can be difficult. Well, 12 and 13 to the left of picture there. Lilesa is 12 from Ethiopia. Dennis Kipruto Koech is 13 to the left of picture. They go through 12 kilometers, and certainly the pace has picked up a little bit over the last mile or so since they went through 10K and saw that they were going relatively slowly. The ever-present pacemakers for Mary Kaitani. They really do take so much of the burden off her shoulders, albeit she's running at a pace here that has never been managed before. She slowed a little bit over the last few minutes. Her time at 10 kilometers was outrageously quick. 31:09. She was very much on world record tempo. She goes through 12 kilometers there, Kaitani. And she has slowed a little bit. Maybe she's had to negotiate a breezy section. They're on the flat here, heading down towards the hospital turn, as we could call it. It's 15 kilometers. Then she has this flat section to go back up the other side of the road, followed by a slight uphill climb past the Etau Links Golf Club. Well, here's a surprise. Dennis Kipruto Koech, this youngster, pushing on hard. He's just 18 years old, can you believe? His lifetime best is 61:30, and that was at altitude in Nairobi, back home in Kenya. That was in October, so not too long ago. 12, Faisa Lilesa, chasing hard. Well, we can take a look at Denis Kipruto-Koec's card here. 61:30 is his lifetime best. He's never broken 28 minutes for 10,000, but again, significantly, that personal best on the track was in Nairobi. And in fact, this is his first race outside Kenya ever, this young man. And what a job he's making of it too. 14 kilometers then for the man who has now built up a very, very significant lead. I have to say, Denis Kipruto-Koec is destroying this field with this really solid burst in the middle section of the race. Kaitani, well, in contrast, she did the job very early on, didn't she? The pace she set out at was so ambitious. It's not surprising she slowed a little bit. 14 kilometers there for Kaitani, and she's now beginning to slip outside world record schedule. In fact, there's been a fairly significant slowing over this last couple of miles now for Mary Kaitani. And in contrast, yet again, in this men's race, Denis Koech here, this youngster, has kicked in really hard over the last couple of miles, and he's blown away with 15 kilometers gone. What, 9 athletes who have broken the 1 hour mark for the half marathon. 42:57 there for Koech at 15 kilometers. Kiprotich goes through with Lilesa behind him, then Kipyego. And those guys are about 20 seconds down now. They really have felt the power of that surge from the youngster, who's grasped with both hands this opportunity to get a big race in. $15,000 prize money, remember, for the winners here. That's no insignificant amount for any of these athletes, but for a youngster like the man leading the men's race, Koech, it'll be his biggest payday by a long way. Mary Kaitani then goes through 15 kilometers, 47:12. Well, last year she was 46:40 at 15 kilometers during that world record run, so clear indication there that the time has slipped away from her over the last 3 miles or so, leading up to 15K. Really, the first 10 kilometers was a little bit over-ambitious. We know she's only been training for about 6 weeks, very hard, since her wedding on December the 31st. This young man, well, he might only be 18, but he's been waiting for this opportunity for some time. He said to me yesterday that he has been racing school races over the last few years. Further back down the road, the masses enjoying their day.
The RAK Half Marathon. The RAK Half Marathon.
Welcome back to this 6th edition of the RAK Half Marathon. The leader has got a gap of what, about 80 or 90 meters now as he approaches 16 kilometers. And this is the youngster, just 18 years old, Denis Kipruto-Koech, looking strong. And he's built up this lead as he goes through 16 kilometers there. Built up this lead in the space of 2 or 3 kilometers. He really has pushed in hard in this third quarter of the race to ask all the questions of his chasers, his pursuers. Real racing maturity being shown here by Kip-Koech or Kipruto-Koech. Lovely rhythm, lovely relaxation in the upper body there. Real grit, determination written across those features. Here's one of the pre-race favourites, Wilson Kipsang Kiprotich, who so nearly broke the world record for the marathon in Frankfurt back in October. And here we have the champion from last year, surely heading for a retention of that title in this RAK Half Marathon. Mary Kaitani behind the 2 pacemakers who have been ever present since the start some 40 minutes or so ago. Very quiet character when you speak to her on a one-to-one basis, quite nervous. Seems so unsure of herself, but he put her in her racing shoes and her racing vest, and goodness me, has she got real determination and strength of will. Knows what she's doing too. She goes through the 16-kilometer marker, checks her watch. She'll have splits in her mind as to where she should be at each point of the race. And she knows full well that while up to halfway and just after halfway she was on world record schedule. Well, of course, races like this don't happen out of the blue. They take enormous cooperation. His Highness Sheikh Saud bin Saqr Al Kazimi has been a real friend of the race since the very first year, and Eve spoke to him before the gun.
Now, a record number of entries this year. Why do you think this event is so popular?
Well, I think it's people to go out people to, it's a great event for people to get together and to actually to enjoy themselves. You know, running and marathon is really a great event for people to exercise in one way. It's people to meet. It's a great event.
Now, you are the father and the patron of athletics in Ras Al Khaimah. You've brought your emirate to the international stage in creating this race. Why?
Oh, I think we want to send a message of welcome. I want to send a message for our people to give them an opportunity to be known, to actually to encourage people for sports. Sports is important for our health, for our well-being, and it's a great event as well for socializing. And it's a great for Ras Al Khaimah to host such an event and to be known and to welcome these kind of participants here. It's a great message.
Now, on the international stage, Ras Al Khaimah has established itself as one of the world's great half marathons. Why do you think the elite athletes are so attracted to this race?
We live in a global village. People like to experience the new stuff, and I think it's Ras Al Khaimah marathon is well organized, well looked after, good price, and I think people of the Emirates hospitable, you know, and this is, you know, people like to be welcomed, and they are welcome.
Welcomed indeed, including this young man who is heading for a massive payday, indeed perhaps his first ever payday. His previous half marathon best was set in Nairobi in thin air, 61 minutes 30, and he's heading for a time a lot quicker than that as he passes through 17 kilometres, so 4 to go, about 2.5 miles for this young man, although the gap hasn't grown. Now that's interesting. Is the chase on? Look, number 7 has moved into second place, Asmaro Bekele, the 26-year-old Ethiopian who has gone under 60 minutes before for this marathon, for the half marathon distance. So it's not a foregone conclusion that the man wearing lucky 13 on this occasion, Dennis Kipruto Koech, is heading for victory because the chase is on. Bekele here, who runs for the prisons team back home in Addis Ababa, goes through 18 kilometres. He too has got a real battle on his hands. Well, further back, it's just the distance itself which is proving the real obstacle for many of the joggers. But they will get round. The organisation is very good, plenty of water on the course. And here, of course, is a young lady who will get round and will almost certainly win yet again in the RAK event. These pacemakers have done a tremendous job. Nice steady tempo for her and helped her through the difficult third quarter of the race. Mary Kaitani is one of the greatest runners in the world at the moment after that win in London last year, the London Marathon, in 2 hours 19 minutes. Only 12 women in history have gone under 2:20 for the marathon, so she is tremendously strong, has great speed too, and well, a good championship temperament. Lifted the world championship title for the half marathon distance back in 2009, and when it comes to commercial races like this one, she gets it very right as well. You can see athletes in the background heading down towards that southeastern extension of the course before they take the hospital U-turn. Kaitani there going through 18 kilometres, checks her watch again and knows that with the 3,000 metres to go, surely she won't be caught. She's had the opportunity at the different turns to give herself plenty of information on the progress of those behind her. And without any doubt, the gap behind her will not be closed now, barring disaster.
Johnny, let him catch up. Okay.
Lovely, fluent, economic style. She's got not a lot of movement in the upper body. The arms a little tight across the chest there, but it's not all about how wonderful you look when you run. It's how well you cover the ground for your body, for your balance. This young man too, lovely, consistent running style there as he goes through 19 kilometres. And that gap hasn't closed anymore, has it? It's staying consistent at around 10 or 12 seconds. Still, Bekele of Ethiopia trying to close him down. There is this great rivalry between the East African athletes, the Ethiopians and the Kenyans. And in all 5 previous editions, of the 5 previous editions, Ethiopia have had a winner in only one, and that was last year through Dariba Merga. But it looks like the Kenyans are going to get back on top through this young man. Says his father is a farmer I said, is it a big farm? He said, yes, it's quite big, 7 acres. Well, depends where you come from, whether you think 7 acres is big. This will be probably the family's biggest ever payday. Through 20 kilometres then, surely heading for victory now. The time 57.26 there. He's got a lead of, well, it's closed a bit, hasn't it? Look at that, just 9 seconds. And without any doubt at all, Bekele in the background is gradually closing down on this youngster. And I wonder if he's aware. He's got to negotiate the final left-hand turn as yet. And then he will possibly get a chance to glance across and see that there is still some danger there. That prize money not secured. It's an awkward gap for Bekele, who in the red vest back there. There's that little glance. Now he knows, and that'll give him a little spurt of adrenaline because he'll be scared. And that's a good thing. Good for him to know that he's under threat here. He can't cruise home. He's going to have to work very, very hard. And look at Bekele. The work rate there of the Ethiopian in the background has certainly increased. And that gap is closing further. I'd say it's about 6 or 7 seconds. There's about half a mile to go now. He can see the finish line way, way down in the distance beyond. He can see the finish arch calling to him almost, where the crowds wait. His Highness, the ruler, waits for him as well. And now he begins to up his game. Look at that. There's a little bit harder pumping of the arms. Another little glance over his shoulder. And Asmaro Bekele in the background is working very hard, but hasn't been able to close the gap. So we do have a new champion, a new name on the record books, and it's the youngster, Denis Kipruto Koech, who takes the title there. Unofficially, his time I saw on that clock, 60 minutes 40 as he goes through the line. In second place, here comes Bekele. That's a good run from him, a really strong closing 3 or 4 kilometres. And in third place, wearing number 2, one of the pre-race favourites. It's still a solid run from Wilson Kipsang Kiprotich. Well, the chasing pack of ladies are some way down on Mary Kaitani. This has turned into a little domestic affair. I say domestic affair. I think they're just watching each other, these 3 athletes, frankly, rather than really being concerned about where Kaitani might be. They too will have been getting feedback at the various twists and turns of the course, and they'll know that she's gone, that the win is hers. And they're watching each other, and of course when that happens, the little cat and mouse game develops and they start slowing a little bit. Here's Kaitani. The head has got that little lean to it, hasn't it, to one side. One of the little clicks of her running form. And her features, her face gives nothing away as she goes through 20 kilometres. 63.12 there for Kaitani. Well, in her world record, she went through in 62.36, so she's, what, some 35 seconds or so down on last year's time, but she's still running much, much faster than I expected. Yep. Well, the feet of others just walking round, not moving quite so fast.
The RAK Half Marathon. The RAK Half Marathon.
Welcome back to Ras Al Khaimah, where Mary Kaitani is assured now of victory. She negotiates the final left-hand turn into the finishing straight, which is about 800 metres long, if not more approaching a kilometre. But as you can see, she's in glorious isolation here. The champion from last year, not on world record pace. That world record from last year will be safe, so to speak. 65 minutes 50 for the half marathon. Nobody's approached that in the last 12 months. Kaitani herself, well, this will be the quickest time in the world this year by a long, long way. Of course, last year she set a world record at 10 miles en route to that world best. But today, she suffered a little bit through the third quarter after being on world record pace through the first half of this half marathon and was about a minute outside that time at 10 miles. Well, here comes Kaitani, chasing home the two of the pacemakers that helped her through the race. Her husband there, Charles Koech, number 18, sprints for the line. Kaitani, though, very close up behind, finishing strongly, and no other woman in sight. She's going to win very, very comfortably here again, over 2 minutes in front. Kaitani retains her RAK half marathon title. Her time there, unofficially, 66 minutes 49 seconds. And here is the battle for second place. High knees there from the athlete wearing number 54. That's Faisa Tadesse of Ethiopia. Behind her, the Kenyan pairing of Chirono and Rono. But there is Mary Kaitani already accepting the plaudits and shrouded in that Kenyan flag. 100 metres to go for that chasing trio. Kaitani beginning to cool down as these three reach the hottest point of their race, and still in the lead there, 56, Georgina Rono, inches ahead, 57, Gladys Chirono, her compatriot, cannot raise her knees any higher. And indeed, second place to snatch there by Rono from Chirono. Tedesse takes fourth place. The three of them locked together for most of the race. The time's still impressive, all three of them well under 70 minutes, but it couldn't have been closer, could it? Look at that. 56, Georgina Rono takes second. Her time unofficially 69.13. Well, further back down the course, some good club runners are still easing their way around the roads of RAK. Some of them through the 20.